Can I ask a question? You said so mortgage institutions and banks get their funds from a pool. Now, what is their relationship with central bank vis-a-vis source of funds?
Okay.
I mean, the central bank would define rates by MPR, but how do they get mortgage funds?
Okay, so
central bank fund mortgage banks.
Okay, so the relationship between mortgage banks or mortgage institutions and central bank is one of a supervisory role. So all the mortgage banks in Nigeria are given their license by the Central Bank of Nigeria, which wasn't always the case. There was a Federal Housing Authority that gave licenses to mortgage banks before, but now everything has become uniform. So we're all reporting to the Central Bank of Nigeria. So in terms of financing and funding, what the central bank or that mortgage landscape does is that the funding given to the mortgage banks right now would be coming from the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, right, which is the National Housing Fund. So anything in terms of funding for mortgage banks coming from the central bank is through Federal Mortgage Bank, which is a single-digit interest rate loan. The NHF is 6% still.
Right. Yeah.
And the maximum they would give per individual will be 50 million. Right, so recently was reviewed from 15 million cap to 50 million now.
Yeah,
okay. We'll get to that after, but I want us to to cover the commercial rates. So basically, if the rates are between 26% to 30%, the question is, how many people can afford
this? Okay, so this is speaking from maybe experience of clients, right? Recently, why would somebody go for a mortgage of 26%?
Exactly.
Or it could be because they don't want to miss out on an opportunity, right? You see a particular property, and I mean, it's what you want to get. It could be your wife Ginger, and you're like, we need to get this property, or so and so just moved into this estate and they got a good deal. I think we should do that as well. And whoever is trying to get this property may feel like, okay, I can get these funds to pay for this property, but maybe just not right now, right? So, or they know that, okay, if they work towards a structure, maybe within 2-3 years, they would get that money, right? So to stop gap, right? Really, a lot of people come in for a mortgage. Maybe they take a 10-year, 15-year tenure, right? And before that time elapses, they may have gotten the funds that they need. But commercial mortgages, sometimes people take it as a stopgap. Some people also may be buying a property for investment purposes, right? And they know that the business they want to do with that particular property or that set of properties is going to yield them something that they can use to pay back the repayment, right? And then some. So that could be, people may be thinking about it from an investment perspective as well. Some people are just boxed up, right? And they can afford it. Yeah.
What about the corporates? So I'm curious if corporates take these mortgages, or even mortgages at all.
When you say corporate, what do you mean?
As in a corporate entity.
Okay, so in terms of financing for real estate, there are a couple of things that we may need to look at. A corporate entity may be taking funds to build and develop, right? They may not be going for this 26%, right? There's some relationship that the mortgage banks have with other institutions apart from Federal Mortgage Bank, right? Like the Family Homes Fund, right? Like NMRC, like all those other financing institutions. So they may be able to source for funds at a lower rate than this, right? So if people are looking at constructing estates, building estates, cooperatives that want to develop estates, they'll be going for maybe a cooperative loan.
Okay.
Right? To be looking at between 10 to 12%.
Oh, really?
Interest, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it could be we get cheaper funding for corporates
Yeah.
that are trying to build and develop. What that would look like is that the cooperatives or the companies will take the loan, build and develop maybe between 2 to 3 years, right? But on the premise that they are getting mortgage subscribers, people buying into their houses that are going to take mortgages, right? So let's just play around with figures.
Yeah.
So if the corporate has taken 300 million, right, they could say we're bringing 10 people that are going to take 30 million naira mortgages individually. So 10 people covers at 30 million. So when they finish building, developing, and they hand over the keys to the subscriber or the tenant, he's not a tenant now because he has bought to the homeowner, the liability shifts from the builder or developer or the cooperative to the individual now. So the individual now takes a longer term mortgage, which could now be the National Housing Fund, right? They'll just take a 30 million naira mortgage for 10 years, 20 years at a single digits interest rate.
And to qualify, naturally, there, as we understand it, I mean, how do you qualify? You have to contribute to a fund.
Yes.
To the National Housing Fund, or if it were a cooperative investment or fund.
Yeah, so to qualify for the NHF loan,
Yes,
individuals need to be contributing to the NHF scheme, right? Which I think was last year.
Minimum 6 months, they say.
Yeah, minimum of 6 months. So I think about last year, the government made it optional. So
to contribute.
People don't need to contribute directly from source. So it was like before, it was like paying taxes.
Yeah.
Immediately you get your payroll, you take away the payee, you take away the pension, you also take the NHF. So it was mandatory for companies to pay
your NHF.
Yeah, your NHF. But now people can opt to
opt in.
Opt in or opt out.
Okay.
Right? So, but you have to be contributing as at the time of your application if you want to gain access to this National Housing Fund.
Sorry, can I ask, in your experience of issuing mortgage loans, especially in Nigeria, what's the average loan duration or mortgage
loan
tenure?
duration? So I would say 10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years.
15 years. But there's some that could be much longer. There's some that could be shorter.
Okay, so I mean, the biggest challenge in our experience in real estate for the purchasing of homes or any other property, if you ask me, in our experience of out of 100, I'd say 1% has used a mortgage, meaning 1 out of 100 transactions has been a mortgage-based transaction. And the obvious question is why? And the obvious answer is interest rates. What's your take on the interest rates, and what would you recommend is the most ideal interest rate level for a mortgage loan?
This is a tricky question. So the interest rate has been a challenge. Can't fault that, but it's a simple reason, right? Because you're cheap. You're sourcing capital. So the higher the interest rate on the capital you source, the higher, you just have to put a markup on that.
Yeah.
Right. So that has been a bottleneck for people taking commercial mortgages. On the flip side, people taking the National Housing Fund, I think maybe the administration of it has not been as seamless as people would expect. So it takes a bit more time than a regular, you just walk into a bank and apply for a loan, and within 1 to 2 weeks, you should get approval and then disbursement. So people that are taking the NHF need to wait a bit.
What's that wait time like now?
So, we tell clients between 6 months to 12 months.
Wow.
Okay, 6 months to 12 months. And that's why it makes a lot of sense for people to key into it if you're going for a project, right? But if you have an agreement with your developer or realtor that I want to pay in installments, then you can work towards the NHF being the final payment.
Right.
Yeah. So to answer your question directly, what I feel will be the ideal interest rate, maybe between that 6 to 10%. 6 to 10%. If it's
Single digit, at
single
least.
digit.
Single digit.
Single digit. That's the way it makes sense.
Yes.
That's the way if you want to bring more people into the pool, right, which is really what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
By increasing that interest rates, some people have been squeezed out of even considering a mortgage because you're thinking about how am I going to pay for this with the high cost of living in Nigeria as well. If we really want to see a lot more people participate, right, it has to be squeezed down to about 6 to 12%.
Okay.
Being realistic.
Okay.
So let's go to like the National Housing Fund. Who qualifies for that? Like in terms of age, how old do you have to be to apply, and how much do you have to earn a minimum income?
So the Act stipulates that an individual should be about 21 years before you can apply. How much the person's to be earning, I don't think you can put a peg on it, right? Because it could also, the question could also be how much do they need, right? I know we're talking about the maximum
capital being
50 now, but some people are still taking, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, case maybe. Or they're not taking it because that's what they want, but that's what they can afford. So the way the system works is that your profile according to your earnings. Okay. So what you can afford is what they would give you. So not everybody will be able to take the 50 million. But if you can afford it, they would profile you and then give you. Okay. So who can access it once you're 21? And also once you're contributing to the NHF scheme. Yeah. Right. As he said, for a period of 6 months, then you are eligible to apply.
So when you apply, can you give us a quick step-by-step process, and what are the applicable fees for any of our audience that likes looking at mortgages right now? Yeah.
Okay, so if an individual is interested in a mortgage, one of the first things they'll need to do is to identify property. They'll need to see, okay, maybe they're keen into this estate or that estate, and this is the offer price. So they will need to get an offer from a vendor that's willing to sell to them. It doesn't have to be an estate. It could be an individual just to go dispose their property. So they come to us, right? And we'll do an assessment, see the title documents of that property. Because one of the key things that drives mortgages is collateral, of course. All right. So no bank would want to give a mortgage or a loan to an individual that has maybe a faulty title, right? Or they haven't perfected or registered the title of that property. So we do all that due diligence, right? We do a search, do evaluation of the property. If it adds up, then the profile of the customer and see, okay, based on what you earn, you're not going to use all of your money to pay back a loan. That would be criminal on our part. Right. So we try to advise customers, right? Okay, that based on your earnings, and we're flexible.
Is there a KYC form you guys go with to profile
the form, profile the customer. Yeah. And then just assess all the earnings of the customer, because some people, they work in 9 to 5, but their side hustle is actually their main hustle.
It brings more income.
It brings in more income, basically. Yeah. So we look at the earnings holistically, right? And see, okay, based on this person's monthly income, how much can they afford? And we're flexible enough to also look at, there might be people that have earnings that are seasonal, right? Or they may get bonuses at a particular time and they want to consider that for maybe an annual payment or something like that. So we look at all of that, profile the customer and give the customer like a provisional offer. Okay, this is how much we think you can afford. Can you, so let's say the property was 30 million right? And they came in for a 20 million mortgage, right? So what that would mean was that they have to have 10 million either saved, or they found a way that they're going to sort out that 10 million. If they come to us and what they can afford from our own estimation is only 15 million, right? We'll let them know. We'll say, okay, this gap of 5 million, like, how do you want to sort it out? If they're able to, then we proceed with the mortgage application. So we basically assess them, let them know how much they can afford, get all the necessary documentation, do the due diligence, and then submit the application.
Okay. And if they accept and they're complying with terms, I'm just curious about the property registration leg. Naturally, if a property of interest is not yet registered, would the mortgage institute consider lending against it if they do the deed of legal mortgage on that property? I'm just curious as to that legal aspects, especially with title that's not yet registered, because a lot of the country, a lot of the states, they have title that is not yet registered in some cases. Some people have title that's fine, but they haven't registered it and they don't know how to go about it.
Yeah.
And so, I think this might be informative.
Okay. So I think the title aspect of things when it comes to a mortgage is actually very key. The key driver of mortgages in Nigeria. But because we're working in the Nigerian landscape, we always try to not just put a bar for customers, but always look at, okay, how can we solve whatever challenge they may be? So for a property that maybe there's some issue in terms of the registration. So let's give an example for it to make sense. There's an estate along Chevron axis, right? And in that estate of maybe 50 units, somebody also bought the unit, right, from the estate. So the title is in favor of the estate, right?
Yes.
So the person has bought maybe outrightly, right, and was given a deed of assignment from the estate. And so along the line, maybe the person decides, I'm not feeling Nigeria anymore, I want to Japa, and they want to dispose that particular property. So they bring it to our client, right? Okay, we're giving you an offer for this property, this is the amount, and we're willing to sell it to you, right? And we'll negotiate how the payment will be structured. So the customer comes to us, right, because we're very reliable. So come to us, we discuss about it, and in terms of doing the due diligence, we find out that the person selling to this customer actually has a title, has property documents, right, but has not registered it, right? So what's the challenge there? The challenge could be that somebody comes tomorrow and says, it wasn't OJ that actually bought this property, it was actually you.
Sure.
Right. So to secure ourselves, we want a situation where we can get commitment from
The issuer.
Right? That okay, they would be willing to issue a new deed of assignment to this person that is buying from us. So if we can get comfort and confidence from the original title holder,
Yes.
we can then work out
a legal transfer.
Yes.
Yeah.
How it should work. But it's important that you raise that question, because title documentation, title registration, and perfection is actually a major bottleneck in transactions in real estate in Nigeria.
I'm just curious, like randomly. So, as a business, which aspect of your business would you say is number one? Would you say is the National Housing Fund bid, or is the regular mortgage bid given to residential buyers or cooperative buyers?
Okay, so what we try to do is a good blend of everything, right? Because in Nigeria, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. The thing about the National Housing Fund is that it's the cheapest fund you can get out there, right? So it makes it very attractive for customers. So we try to encourage as many people to key into it as possible, because there are some people that have been contributing to it for all their lives and they've never even heard of how they can access it. Right? So your money just basically going. So every Nigerian has the opportunity to access that fund and you should take advantage of it.
On that note, can I ask, again, if you might know, is there a way now to check if you have been contributing and you are not aware that maybe your employer has been contributing to an NHF fund for you?
Yeah.
Is there a way of contacting the NHF, providing some sort of details to try?
Yes. So we have a good rapport with the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, who is basically in charge of administering the National Housing Fund. So these are the custodians of every contribution that an individual makes or a corporate makes on behalf of a client. So we could, get across to the Federal Mortgage Bank with your details and find out, okay, have they been contributing for you? Because there are some people, unfortunately, that deduct it from your pay, but never remits to Federal Mortgage Bank. So you can actually find out and know what your balance is, right? Even in the your NHF balance, basically.
Is it possible to do that online, or you need to go through some
so
agency?
It's possible to make that inquiry on the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria website, but if you want to get a fast answer, you need to maybe either visit in person or just through your primary mortgage institution, make that inquiry, and within a day you can get that information. Yeah. So we do a bit of not a bit of everything, a bit of the bits that we feel are important to our business, right? Because construction is important, because without construction there's no supply of the houses that we need to give mortgages. So that's very important to us. Commercial loans as well, because you can't just wholly rely on
one segment,
and you can also be a bit disappointed because of the timeline for the NHF. So we try and see how we can source funding to help our customers access commercial loans as well.
Thank you so much, Tarela.
Thank you for having me.
So anybody that wants a mortgage, thank you so much. Thank you.